In today's gospel reading, we just heard about the temptations Jesus faced regarding his own identity and his mission. And I'll return to those in a moment. But first, I think we have to admit that for years, we Catholics and Catholics around this country have been struggling with a serious temptation of our own. You see, we have been tempted quite strongly to leave the church. And many of us have left. I'm sure many of you know people in your family or friends who have given into that temptation and left the church. And I think the church herself needs to listen to why these folks have left. Many of them have very good reasons for leaving. Certainly one of them is clericalism. Every time a priest or deacon or bishop thinks and acts in a way that puts him above all the baptized, he's going to drive people away. Of course, people leave because of the sex scandal. I think they also leave because often our preaching and our liturgies just don't feed people. They don't feed them in ways that people really need. We live in a superficial culture, and people need to hear a meaningful word from the Lord. And often, they don't receive that. And there are many other reasons, legitimate ones, why people leave. But I think that underneath all of these reasons is the failure of church leaders and us as the people of God to proclaim and live the beautiful and wild life that Jesus offers us. Let me say that again. I think that underneath all the reasons people leave, the real deep reason is because as a church, we have failed to proclaim and live this beautiful and wild life Jesus has for us. So this morning, I think we want to take a look at that again. Let's take a look at the life Jesus offers us and the person of Jesus himself by considering his baptism and his temptation. These are actually two events in one movement. So let's go back first to his baptism. It's what happens right before he's tempted by the devil. Remember, as Jesus walks out of the Jordan River dripping wet, the heavens are torn open, and the Spirit of God pours down upon him. And Israel has been waiting for the heavens to be torn open for centuries. And finally it has happened, and the Spirit and life and power of heaven has poured down upon Jesus. And then he hears from heaven the voice of the Father saying, "This is my beloved one." Now, we got to get clear here. When we talk about God, we're not talking about some old bearded guy way up there somewhere. No, we are talking about the inexhaustible mystery of love that is present to everything here, every one of us, and everything within the vastness of our cosmos. That's what we mean when we say God. The vast, infinite, inexhaustible presence and power of love. And when the Spirit came down on Jesus, he became conscious of God's love for him. His sense of identity and his entire mission were shaped by this constant experience of God's inexhaustible love for him. So that when he comes out of the Jordan, he is brimming with the Holy Spirit and the power of God. And he is the visible expression and presence of God's beauty and love. Wherever Jesus went, Whatever he did, he brought about God's kingdom because he was bringing the beauty and love of God into people's lives. This is why crowds flocked to him. This is why they were going out to see him and listen to him, because they sensed in some real way that the power and beauty of God was here, present with them, eating with them, walking with them, talking with them. Now, the same Spirit that filled Jesus with this sense of God's love is the Spirit that drove him to mission. And the Spirit first sends him out to the desert to do battle with the dark forces that were opposed to that mission. Jesus first goes out into the desert to take on the forces that were opposed to the coming kingdom. Now, do not think about some person, some creature with hooves and some kind of a red forked pitchfork. Please. That's some kind of naive view of what we mean by the devil here. We're talking about real demonic evil. Jesus is engaging in a battle with the forces that were behind the sex abuse scandal. He's engaging in a battle with the very forces that were behind slavery in this country, torture in the world, violence in families. He's engaging in the battle with cosmic evil that gave rise to the Nazis, that promotes the abuse and mistreatment of girls and women worldwide. What the enemy tempted Jesus to do was to use his abilities to serve his own needs. You're hungry? Use those abilities to make some bread. He tempted Jesus to accumulate power and prestige as he went about his mission. And think about it. Anybody who engages in a mission, a political mission, a military mission, what do? They accumulate power. They accumulate wealth. And they seek after prestige. And Jesus rejects all of those. Instead, he remained loyal to God and chose to engage in a mission through humble service. Now, when he walks out of the desert, he walks out of there as God's loyal, humble servant. But here's the important thing. He walks out of there knowing he has overcome the forces of evil. This reading of the gospel today, it's not really about temptation. It's about power. It's about the power Jesus has. The power he's received from God. Not the kind of power that dominates, but the kind of power that liberates, that brings about new life and possibilities. This is the power that Jesus brings to us, to free us from our fears and our hatreds and our blindness and everything that distorts life. You see, this morning, I want you to realize that Jesus, in his baptism and temptation, is the beauty and power of God present to us. So I want you to imagine right now, right here, because we're told when 2 or 3 are present, Jesus is with us. That the Lord is here with us in his risen body. There's a radiant beauty shimmering off of him as the Spirit of God fills him. He is filled with God's love and beauty and power. There's something deeply attractive about his presence. He brims with the freedom and a life that he wants to share with all of us. This is the Lord who wants to come into your life this morning. This is the one who wants to be at the heart of our parish and our church and the world. He is the one that we must proclaim and live for, because he alone can give us what we need and the world cannot give. He alone can lead this church out of darkness. And you know, if we as a parish, as a church, lived for him, for his beauty and power, lived to serve him, people would have no doubt that the Lord is found when we gather. No question. They come flocking in here to have the same experience we're having. But I know this is a dark and hard time to be a Catholic. And some do wonder if the Jesus I just described is present here when we gather. But I want to assure you this morning that even in the darkness, the Lord is present. Even in hard times for this church, he comes to us with God's beauty and love and power. Because we are his body. He comes to us in the Eucharist. He comes to us in this proclaimed word. He's present in our priest, and he's present in all of us as we leave here, filled with his beauty and power to bring it to others. So my friends, this Lent, resist the temptation to leave this beautiful and wild life that the Lord wants to give us. And perhaps even in these dark times in the Catholic Church, you will experience some of that beauty and power. And if you do, please share it with all you meet.